I would say right now, to people my age who are really annoyed, by the way, that the world has changed on their watch. If you think there's, roughly every 250 years in Western history, there is this moment of technological change which changes everything. We're in one of those moments, and then there's the initial breakthrough, maybe the internet was that, and then there are waves. So AI is the wave we're on at the moment. But here's the problem is when that happens, when the world of work changes, the skills of leadership have to change with it. So all my age who grew up in the end of the late industrial age, who understood the rules of that and were trained in it, we're having to learn completely new skills of leadership. And I've said to people, you can ignore it if you want. And if you happen to be 64 and close to retirement or sell the business, go for your life. But I promise you, if you've got 5-10 years to go, you are either going to become an oxbow lake that the river flows around, or you need to learn how to engage.
Steve, I am excited by this one.
Good.
Been looking forward to getting you on.
Thank
We're now in season 3. Can't wait to chat with you here. So, you're a pastor.
I was. Well, I probably still am to some degree.
You are, but you went from being a pastor to speaking in front of thousands of people.
Yeah.
Writing a book in 2016, all around this concept of 5 voices.
Yeah.
Now, you adapted to the modern age and built a mobile app that helps now 250,000 people with their personal development.
Yeah.
You've worked with Nike, Pfizer, a number of other impressive logos.
Yeah.
Pastor to international speaker. We were just talking off camera how you did the keynote at a very prestigious event in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Was it a couple of years ago now?
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about that.
So the end of Ramadan is a big moment because they have been fasting all day, and they have something called the Majil's Lecture, which happens in Abu Dhabi in a purpose-built auditorium where the backdrop is the Great White Mosque in the background. And I delivered the keynote there on the future of leadership in the digital age. Having been a relative nobody, considering the previous 2 speakers were Bill Gates and Bill Clinton, I was the only person who'd ever delivered it without an auto cue. Because I'm going, look, if I'm coming to give you the best I have, you need the best I can give you. And if I'm reading something, it's not going to work. I need to give you as much as I can of me, because that makes sense. But of course, what's the difference is most of my speaking is done in America, and they holler and laugh, and they're literally nothing. No one moved because the royal family are there. Therefore, you don't. But because I'd done a dry run the day before to an audience of 8, and they said it was amazing, I wasn't completely insecure when it happened. I think Becky I was there with, please don't let Steve say something inappropriate and we get carted off. But yeah, that was probably the thing I should have been the most nervous for, James. But ironically, I just stood there and smiled, thinking, I don't know how this happens, apart from me being, I guess, authentic, real, sharing. Usually all the learning comes through my own failures. And people seem much more interested to learn through people who've failed and then gone, well, if I was going to do it differently, how would I do it? And in Giant, we always say, you might as well make different mistakes from the ones we've already made. So that seems to have been the way that people have accepted me as a pioneer, shall we say, who normally would look far too arrogant and far too successful for their own good, to go, oh, you have been through pain. And a lot of what you created has been shaped that way. So yeah, there you go. That's my brag.
Amazing. So Giant, you mentioned there, that's the business you run.
Yep.
Been doing it for over a decade now.
Yeah.
Super impressive. Leadership development.
Yeah.
Typically run by academics.
Well,
but
academics like to think so, James.
They do like to think so. 96 of sort of university professors haven't actually run a business.
No.
So why did you decide that needed to change?
I think the reality, I always a joke with my academic friends, who I love, by the way. I remember having a group of 10 that I was mentoring, and I was the only one without a PhD in organizational leadership and design. And they just said, we find you so annoying, Steve, because you've created simple tools that children can understand and use. that capture about 80% of what we've spent a lifetime writing PhDs on. So I think for me is we're creating resources for probably the 99.9% of people that are struggling to, how do I do relationships in the world I live in today? And I say, you write for the 0.001% who might just about be able to read your PhD, which will sit in a library in a dusty tome. And if I pick it up, it's utterly unreadable because that's the rules of your game. So, you may get a PhD and be lauded by the academic world. Or honestly, as an entrepreneur, I'd rather create resources for the 99.99% of people. And in my experience, that's a much bigger marketplace.
Awesome. 5 Voices.
Yeah.
Book you wrote in 2016 with your co-founder.
Yes, Jeremy.
Jeremy, today that is something you live and breathe basically every day. It's helping hundreds of thousands of people. It has helped hundreds of thousands of people, maybe even into the millions. What is it? Tell me about it.
Okay, so 20 years ago, James, that's probably a long time ago now, somebody paid me to go to Oxford and study 2 things called Myers-Briggs and FireOB. Most people have heard of Myers-Briggs. FireOB is not. They needed a marketing team like you. The FireOB stands for Fundamental Interpersonal Relational Orientations and Behaviors. Very, very poignant, but not really that scalable. So I became a real expert in those things. I mean, I'm a personality that makes the smallest amount of knowledge go the furthest distance, and I specialised the first 33 years of my life in that, and vowed in some senses that I probably ought to discipline talent at least once in my life, and that was it. So, but the trouble is, Myers-Briggs and a lot of the other psychometric instruments, it's Hogan or Berkman or whatever it might be, they're amazing in the hands of the right people. So I always say the therapy is only as good as the therapist, and find somebody who's really skilled at using the instrument who you trust, they'll help you. So when we launched Giant, one of the fundamental things we needed was an ability for leaders to be able to look in the mirror and go, what's it like to be on the other side of me? Well, of course, my Jedi mind tricks were sensational. And the first program, Jeremy being a connector, of course, sold all 24 seats on our first executive program. I wasn't convinced we were ready. And so therefore, for me, I'm not selling anything until it's perfect. Somewhere between the two is the answer. But without Jeremy, there'd be no business. Anyway, we'd vowed that basically the new world was so different to the old world, that leading in the digital world was going to be so different. The reality, one of the things was people are overwhelmed. So, anything you use has to be, we talked about being visual, interactive with immediate application. Otherwise, you just come out of whatever it is and it just gets blown away in this tsunami of email demand and the 365, 24/7 world we live. So we made a vow which said everything we create to help leaders navigate the world that now is. And 12 years on, of course, everyone thinks, well, of course, but 12 years ago, it's pretty radical. Had to be an educated 13-year-old, had to be able to understand it, use it, and teach it to their friends. If it didn't pass that test, it wouldn't scale inside large organizations. And the issue is most investment goes into an executive team, but it's usually too complicated. When they come out and try and share it with everyone else, it doesn't work. So educated 13-year-old. My daughter, Izzy, was, an educated 13-year-old. She's now 25, even more educated. And she said, Daddy, I love the fact I'm an ENFP. I love the fact I can understand it, I can use it, but it's too complicated to teach to my friends. Doesn't it violate the principles you and Uncle Jeremy said you built Giant on? When you kind of, from the mouths of babes, I'm like, oh, yes, Izzy, let me go away. So 5 Voices was written, James, it's written in the source code of Jungian type, but it's written to create a construct where everybody can understand it and use it, but it's simple without being simplistic. So there are 5 voices. We speak all 5, but some of them are more natural to us than others. So I'm a pioneer, connector, creative guardian, nurturer. So I can do everything, but the ones at the top are the ones that are my real superpowers. So, pioneers are results driven, highly strategic. They love to win. They're very militaristic in the way they analyze things. They're almost, they love winning, and business is a perfect context to move from sport to business, because as a scorecard, I want to win. How do I use my intellect, my strategic brilliance to move the pieces around the chessboard and ultimately checkmate? So that's their superpower. You can see some of the connectors. Connectors' superpower are all in relationships, relational connection, messaging. they have an incredible ability to be able to connect people with opportunities. They just sit at the intersection of life, finding the things, the businesses and the opportunities, and they meet people and they go, James, you need to meet Steve. I think you're going to be perfect together. Or, hey guys, we've got an incredible product, but it's not connecting with the public. So when I go out there, I've tried it. When I describe it like this, everyone wants to buy it. Why don't we use this in our marketing, in our messaging? And connectors are the ultimate kind of Tiggers of the Five Voices world. It's really hard to keep a connector down. And they love doing fun things with people. They always want to win as a team. Pioneers can often be happy to win on their own if they need to. But connectors, it's always, how do we do this together? How do we change the world for good? They're usually championing a cause that is always going to be good for people because they usually feel good about themselves when they do it. Creative is my third voice. Creatives are the most future orientated. They're always stood on tiptoe, looking out into the future, what's coming, trends and ideas, technology, innovation. Amazing gift of being early warning radar system. So they see opportunities and they see threats. I always have a coffee once a month with my creatives and go, what am I missing? What opportunities am I missing? But where are we also in danger of compromise somewhere? The creatives are the highest levels of integrity. If anywhere what we say we're delivering to clients is being misaligned or we're not quite being authentic, it's always the creatives who come after me. And they're always trying to make sure that we have a social conscience. How are we not just making money? How are we being good news to the people we work with? So very highly idealists, internal perfectionists, not usually as good at communication as they think they are, but amazingly valuable in a world which is changing. So that's my third voice. Guardian. Guardians guard what we already have. They are the stewards of the resources. They build systems, they build processes, they make things run on rails. They make sure everything is true, safe, and thought through. So more risk averse, they'll always want to run a pilot project. Guardians love data. Why don't we run the data? I'll even run the pilot project for you, Steve. And when we're sure it's as good as you think it's going to be, then we go all in. So Guardians are truth seekers, truth tellers. Sometimes they have to be careful that they can be right and wrong. At the same time, they can be right in what they say, but just wrong in the tone they bring it. And then nurturers are the champions of people, relationships, values. They are the most self-giving. They're always looking out for the needs of others. They provide the relational glue inside teams and families. Incredibly dedicated, hardworking professionals, but really almost take more delight in other people's success than their own. So if you think about it, it's not which one are you, which four are you not. It's what's the combination of allowing your superpowers to engage with the world. So I always say to people is knowing what your superpowers are is stage one. But actually creating a context and a framework where everyone gets to bring their best, I think differentiates the leaders who win from those that don't. And trust me, as an immature pioneer growing up, I used to think silence was agreement. It just meant that everyone thought I was so opinionated, I'd already decided what was right. And in the end, if anyone challenged it, I usually blew them up. So silence wasn't agreement. Silence was, Steve, we don't really believe you're wanting to listen to our voice. Now, I don't do anything without making sure the advisory board of my life, so my fourth and fifth voices are nurture and guardian, who represent, by the way, 73% of people. There's not an even distribution. Only 7% speak pioneer, 11% connector, first voice, 9 creative, 30 guardian, 43 nurturers. So for me, 73% of people, when I meet them, are automatically wary because they think I'm trying to sell them something. So I'm not the best communicator in my house, even though it really annoys me. People trust my wife as a nurturer guardian far more than me.
This episode is sponsored by Opus. Opus brings entrepreneurs together to create opportunity through power of connection. Opus is a curated community for business builders who understand that relationships are the backbone of business and success. If you are an entrepreneur, founder, business builder, laser focused on a mission, Opus could be for you too. To find out more, go to joinopus.org. Now back to the show. So I wonder where I would fit into this.
Okay.
I would guess I'm a pioneer. I love to win.
Okay.
I have done my Myers-Briggs a long time ago. I'm an ESFJ.
Well, we've got a lot of work to do there, James, because the ESFJ by nature is a nurturer, connector, guardian.
Oh, wow.
Pioneer is last. But there's a lot. I always say to people is, when people meet you, we're meeting a complex version of nature, nurture, and choice. There's a lot of ought and should in men to be more tough, win. But if you ever tested properly as a ESFJ, then probably what it means is you are somebody who is highly relational, loved, an amazing friend who everyone likes being with, but you've kind of either through authority figures or through necessity or through schooling have been taught that basically this is part of what the role men is. So you'll be brilliant at connecting with people. Everyone trusts you. To work with a nurturer, connector, guardian, you would rather, if you ever did a deal where you didn't give the client great value for money, you would not sleep in the evening, and in the morning you wake me up, you'd ring me and say, Steve, I've charged you too much, or I don't think it was fair.
Well, I'll have to pass that on to my clients.
If you can do it, I always say the nurturers make the most incredible entrepreneurs, but there's always barriers for them to get over because they always have a little bit of imposter syndrome, which is, am I really good enough to do this? So once they actually have someone who champions them, believes in them, and says, you really are, you actually have a competitive advantage. But most nurturers don't believe that, James, without really secure upbringings, really good schooling, and ultimately people who champion them. So I am, as a true pioneer, I always say that if any nurturers ever hear me on a podcast or ever take the assessment and come out their way, and they want a 15-minute pep talk with me where I will speak life into them. Now, the amazing how many people who are connectors, for example, will ring up and go, Steve, can I have it? And I go, are you sure you're a nurturer? Of course, they're not. Most nurturers would never want to bother me because they go, I don't think I'm as that important enough. And I go, well, it's your fault, not mine. It's a genuine invitation. And for me, the 43% of people who in this world speak nurture as their first voice, I so wish their voice was more involved in every aspect of our life as a society, in politics, in business. The world will be a lot fairer, a lot more just, a lot more caring, a lot more enjoyable to live in. But sadly, most of the top end of the world are inhabited by argumentative egos like mine, who usually want to win at all costs and find it hard to think about, well, how do we build a society which is just and fair and actually rewards and cares for often some of those that sit around the margins of what we do. So there we go. I don't know if that's true or not, but see how it feels, James.
I feel like I've done one of those sort of tests online where it tells you what you want to hear. But super interesting.
Anyone who tests ESFJ as a male is highly likely to be that.
Yeah.
Because there's no ought and should telling you in nurture you should do that.
Personality tests, do they change over time? Because I think that's a conversation I've had recently where, for example, my ESFJ, it's so funny. I think it really resonated with me when I did it. And I can't say the same for a lot of my schooling.
Yeah.
But it really resonated with me at the time. And I definitely do experience imposter syndrome and a number of the other elements you mentioned. But I did ESFJ when I was maybe a young teen, like sort of when you mentioned your daughter's age, when you were testing the 13-year-old sort of test. Yeah. I reckon I might have been around that age. So now I'm twice that age and some.
Yes.
I imagine I should do it again.
Well, here's the thing, Jose, is to go, there's no assessment in the world that ever guarantees nature. So if you think whenever you take a test or whenever I meet you, I'm observing leadership behaviors, a combination of nature, nurture, and choice, and they all play equally. So nature is your actual, I believe, your biological DNA. I believe your personality is part of how you're made in the same way we map the human genome. I don't think it changes. Nurture, however, is always changing. If you think nurture is your upbringing, your schooling, your successes, failures, gender, ethnicity, faith, blah, 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 life is changing every day, and our nurture is always shaping us. Then we have choice. So, by my age, I've made a lot more choices than you have, and most of them are good ones, but I can think of some I wish I had again. So the reason we behave the way we do to the world, so what we call our leadership behaviors, what people observe in us, or ultimately what we think we ought and should do when we take a test, don't differentiate between those three. So for me, nature doesn't change, but you could take a test a year apart and get a completely different answer because things may be going on in nurture, or you may be going, I'm starting a new role in an entrepreneurial field where I've got to go out and win. So therefore what we do subconsciously even is we elevate particular sets of, well, I need to grow that skill set. So someone who's a nurturer, for example, who's working in finance, I promise you the guardian voice gets elevated. A nurturer is working in entrepreneurial endeavors like you are, where you're working with clients, trying to win clients. Well, the pioneer is always going to come up a little bit because fundamentally it's a competitive world out there, and you've got to be able to show people why working with you is their best choice. Now, for a nurturer, that's excruciating. I often say to my nurturers, are you good at what you do? And initially they kind of go, well, yeah. And I said, no, it's not good enough. I want you to say this because it's true. Steve, I'm outstanding at what I do. Here are the clients that I've worked with. Here's the testimonials that they will give. You're actually very lucky to have me working with you. Now, for a nurturer, that is really hard because it feels like they're being arrogant. And every nurturer I know hates the thought of being arrogant. But I go, there's no such thing as an arrogant nurturer.
But this is the thing, you see, like that's the first word that came to my mind when you started this segment, right? I was thinking, oh yeah, I find it really I can be arrogant when I need to be, I suppose. But,
you're never arrogant.
But it feels hard to be like, no, we are the best.
Yeah.
I recently, obviously, from what I do a lot of LinkedIn posts, and I put up a LinkedIn post, sort of felt like a bit of a brag, and it was sort of saying like, I don't believe there's anyone in the UK right now that is doing what we do better and at scale that we do. And I had to really pause over that post button because it just feels there is that imposter syndrome.
See,
it feels a bit arrogant.
I'm more likely to work with you and promote you knowing that's who you are, because I know that for you to say that, if it wasn't true, you'll have sleepless nights over it.
Or if I believe it.
Yeah, but even then you'll have data which backs it up. But you see the difference of, so for example, every one of us has superpowers and areas where we're not so good at. So there's no, you have to learn how to actually harness the superpowers of everybody. But it begins with self-awareness. So if you're a founder or you almost at the beginning have to do everything. I mean, I often ask people, how many stakeholder relationships are you managing? They always go, oh, there's only 2 of us. I go, no. You're managing clients, you're managing investors, you're managing marketing, you're managing networks, you're managing an ecosystem of relationships, because fundamentally that is what business is. And if you're going to be a founder and you're going to grow something, you are the message. And at the beginning, you are the marketing, you are the sales, you're the product development, you're the R&D. And it's exhausting, which is why a lot of people like the thought of being a founder, because they look at the success of a founder. People look at my calendar now and go like, you do whatever you want, whenever you want, you fly all over these places. And I go, yeah, you haven't seen all the risks that went into this, because when we started it, literally we had nothing again.
Yeah.
I mean, we started with nothing. So if you don't believe it, no one else is going to. But for you, for example, just knowing your nature, you'll never be a better entrepreneur, James, when you lead the way you were made. So if you think about it, growth will mean understanding, gosh, I really need to grow in the pioneer and some of that creative, seeing the future. Or I need to find some people who will be advisors to me, or I can use them as sounding boards, or I always talk about the advisory board you can't afford. So you'll be amazed how many people my age who hopefully have been around the block a few times will meet young entrepreneurs like you. And if you ask and go, hey, is there any chance once every now and again I just run a few things by you? Everyone who's been or is successful, they reach a point where they go, I mean, I know I'm good at what I do now. I mean, I can go and stand on stage. I can work with an executive team. I've worked with some executive leaders for 9 years. There's not a lot I don't know. The real joy for me now is going, how do I raise up and equip and resource people who, go faster and further than I've gone? So that's an interesting concept, because obviously from a faith perspective, I guess as a pastor, Jesus' final words were, go make disciples, teach them everything that I've taught you. So there's an element of which, if you understand the combination of people, faith, love of business, love of winning, I mean, it's almost a perfect combination. But I almost enjoy winning now through the empowering of others more than necessarily, am I the star? Now, I don't mind occasionally, roll me out. I'm a natural show off, put me on a stage. I can perform with the best of them. But fundamentally, if you gave me a choice between, do I want to walk around the world standing on stages all day, or would I actually rather have a combination of really going deeper with people to train them how to do what I do? That's probably been the story of the last 12 years. I could give you, at least 12 people who are running businesses now who had no idea what they were doing when they started. And I probably take more joy in that than I do. I mean, even though it's better for my bank balance, but there we go.
Awesome. I love it. So let's jump back to when you were stepping into entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Didn't have much of a clue what was going.
No.
That was when, as you say now, the calendar might look a bit freer, and or people might view you as successful, or however they want to position, this idealistic view. I mean, it's one reason why we are doing this, which is don't rely on your perception of entrepreneurship with some of the media out there, because they are the 0.1% and they're incredible, and some of them neurotic and everything else that makes them who they are. But the majority of founders in this country and abroad are, I don't like the phrase, but they're really hustling hard. They're really putting in the hours. They're not paying themselves well.
No.
Like for a number of years. I mean, I've been on my entrepreneurial journey now for over half a decade, and it took me a seriously long time to pay myself the same as what I left my career. And I was really young in my career when I started entrepreneurship, and it took me a long time to earn the same amount of money and sort of kick on. So back when Giant started, within the first couple of years, 75% of startups fail. You didn't fail, which is great.
No.
Did you ever feel like you were going to fail?
It's really interesting, James. No would be the honest answer, because when Jeremy and I launched this thing, both of us had already been involved in doing similar things for a whole number of years. So I think we were 42 and 43. So if you think about it, there's some who are entrepreneurs from day one, and they just can't bear the thought of working for people, or they just want to get out and do it. I think we learnt through various other entrepreneurial endeavors, working often for other people or with other people, what in the end we were like, okay, if we get another 20 years, what would we most love to do? Who'd we most love to do it with? And what are the things we've learned that we're not going to repeat along the way? Because often we learn a lot by being with people who are brilliant, but they have serious flaws. And as I say to my lot all the time, I go, guys, look, the joy of being able to be apprenticed by me is you will understand who I am at my best and all the warts I carry with me. And your job is to discern what bits are you going to learn from and imitate, and what bits are you going to say, I can do that better than Steve did. So I think we never felt like we failed. Jeremy was already a much more successful business person than I was. I think that was kind of fortunate for me. I'd spent a lot of time coaching, training, working in the non-profit space in America. Loved it, traveled the world, but always in some ways was more, I always end up, if I'm not careful, dressing a business dressed up as a ministry. I almost find it really hard to charge what I should do. I almost want to be kind to too many people. Jeremy was a great partner because we shared the same heart, but he actually was like, no, we can't do that. So
not everything's for free.
Yeah, no. So I never have anything. They never give me codes. They never give me anything because they know my default is to give it away. So in a sense, it's like the combination. I think that's what I always say to founders, to go, the minimum unit of team for me is 2. And I've never done anything without having a partner, because a lot of entrepreneurs is lonely, and not everyone wants to talk morning, noon and night with you, but you usually have to talk a lot to work out what works and what doesn't. So I always say to people, is having a partner as an entrepreneur makes a big difference. And I think the other question is what network of relationships you bring into your entrepreneurial endeavor. So if you think that, I would say that relationships are the true currency of wealth and influence. So we had a vast amount of relationships of people who believed in us from other areas. So when we said, look, we're moving into this area, would you be interested? I mean, I had yesterday lunch with a senior pastor and his wife over from America, lead one of the largest churches in the US. I've worked with them for 13 years. So when I say we've got something new, can you help? They go, of course. So it's a bit like going, I would say it's not just the idea. Most of your ideas evolve over time, because it's one thing to have a vision you're passionate about, but actually getting the strategy right first time. Jeremy said when we launched Giant, okay, we're going to launch 6 products, no more. He said probably 4 of them will be a complete disaster, 1 of them will be okay, and 1 of them might work really well. Within 3 years, we were doing none of them. So, but they got us started, and I think that's the bit of a lot of entrepreneurs or founders I work with almost go, I have a vision for what I want to do in the world, but it's almost like the vision is still the same. So Jeremy and I, if you cut us in half, how do we change leadership culture, raising up liberators to change their world all over the world, every sector in the world. The strategy we've used and the structures we've deployed over the last 12 years are constantly evolving. They're not inerrant and infallible. And obviously, the digital world has created an innovative moment, an AI right now. If you haven't got an AI play in what you're doing, you probably aren't going to be in business in another 3 years. So, when you get to my age, the key is not to assume you have to be the superstar. It's actually how do you find people who love the vision, believe in you, and want to bring their superpowers to bear. So if I look at the tech development and all the people working on that stuff at the moment, I mean, I don't think any of them are 40. In fact, most of them are early 30s, which is, most people have, I think they say 39 is the ultimate moment where if you haven't done it by then, it's very hard you'll create brand new things at that point.
That's true, but there is also no age on
There's no age limit on
entrepreneurship.
entrepreneurship, because in the end, if you don't have to be the star who comes up with everything. In fact, I would say right now, to people my age who are really annoyed, by the way, that the world has changed on their watch. If you think there's, roughly every 250 years in Western history, there is this moment of technological change which changes everything. So whether it's the printing press that brought in the information age, or maybe the rotary steam engine of James Watt that ushered in the industrial age, we're in one of those moments. And then there's the initial breakthrough, maybe the internet was that, and then there are waves. So AI is the wave we're on at the moment. But here's the problem: is when that happens, when the world of work changes, the skills of leadership have to change with it. So all my age, who grew up in the end of the late industrial age, who understood the rules of that and were trained in it, we're having to learn completely new skills of leadership. And I've said to people, you could ignore it if you want, and if you happen to be 64 and close to retirement or sell the business, go for your life. But I promise you, if you've got 5-10 years to go, you are either going to become an oxbow lake that the river flows around, or you need to learn how to engage. And here's the good thing, is there are a lot of young people, and by young now I probably mean anything from 35 down, James, who are actually desperate for people who will invest in them, have mentors. They're actually, they quite like it if somebody is more for them. So I look at it and go, now, if you're humble enough to say, I'm never going to be on the cutting edge of the digital world, now it comes a huge surprise to nobody, but I am on the cutting edge of the digital world, because Jeremy and I have created an ecosystem and a culture where everybody wants to play. So all of a sudden, all these young bucks who come up with stuff, I mean, I'm looking at stuff at the moment coming through our pipe development line, which is like organizational intelligence on steroids, where effectively you connect Slack, Teams, whatever software you use, it literally reads all the comms, puts it through our 5 Voices AI API, and creates real-time insights that actually team leaders and organizational leaders can use, and it is spooky accurate. So all of a sudden you go, oh, I can see a way in which all the work we've developed on why people behave the way they do hits not just a vitamin. I always say to most entrepreneurs, have you got a vitamin or a painkiller? Everyone knows they should take their vitamins, but they usually don't. If you've got a painkiller, if I've got toothache or a headache, if you've got something that will help me. So if we've got something that in real time you can use inside the platforms you already use, and it's providing live intelligence that helps you make better decisions and develops your people, would you be interested? So, I mean, we're probably a couple months away from an actual commercial product that goes into the 5 Voices system, but we're using it every day already on ourselves, and it's hilarious how accurate it is. Even when you don't think you've told you've been diplomatic, it reads, it knows my personality, So it knows when I say certain things, when I'm exaggerating or when I'm actually fearful. And it's actually reading our mail in a way, James, that is like, wow.
Fascinating. Fascinating. So I actually was reading a study earlier that 73% of founders fail,
Yes.
or leaders, actually, I should say, fail due to lack of interpersonal skills
Yes.
rather than technical know-how.
Yes.
So this is super interesting. So with this, let's call it Five Voices AI. Do you have a working title?
That's Pulse.
Pulse. Cool. So with Pulse, I'm about to communicate a message to a subordinate, etc., and it's basically highlighting how a subordinate might receive that message, and the best way to communicate that. And I think one of the biggest challenges, we actually have a couple of really fascinating and amazing HR clients, so I get to learn a lot every day. It's one of the things I love about my role and my job, and they often talk about how leaders need multiple different personalities to talk to different people, because Steve, you might react in one way, and you know, I need to give you results driven objectives. I need to sort of tell you, come on, Steve, work. You've got this. Work harder. Like, this is your end goal. You get here, you get rewarded. While others need more of an arm around the shoulder and et cetera, et cetera. So, how important are those interpersonal skills, those communication, which is what we've talked about mostly here, right? Is around communication. Yeah. How important is it in a modern day digital age where there's this kind of balance which no one's really sure which way it's going to land between remote, hybrid, in person? I've run remote businesses now for 3-4 years, but with my co-founder Harry, I said I really want to get back in the office with people. Now I've joined some amazing communities such as Opus, which is a community of builders, sort of startup build-ups, so based here, South Africa, the Middle East, and so you get sort of a worldwide view, which is amazing. I love that community. But for my own team, I really want to start building out that team. Obviously, Harry and I are based here, and we'll continue to grow the team here because I want that real world, real time, real person experience. But some would argue that's not scalable. You're missing out on high quality talent, and others have taken the other route. We've got Zoom, James. We've got Google Meets, James. We've got all these amazing tools out there that means I don't need to be in the same room because I actually work really well from a beach in the south of Spain, and I'm a great leader for it. What's your view on that?
Gosh, there's a lot in there. I think the thing is, when I'm listening to you, see, I go, the way you're wired, relational interaction and physical, tangible being together is a far higher need value for you than it would be for others. But what I would say, though, is that this is not a nice to have. The ability to create the environment where other people get to be at their best, how you manage relationships in your founder ecosystem. Once you begin, I mean, do you remember a film called The Matrix, James? Or are you too young for that?
Yeah.
I would say to people is, I can begin to show you how the green letters and numbers start going down. And all of a sudden then is, I always have to be careful because I would be an amazing con man at this point, but once I know how you're made, I can actually communicate with you, and I probably subconsciously, because I'm doing it after tens of thousands of hours, I know how to relate to you to create an environment where you feel seen, valued. I know how to create the space for you to bring your best. I know, because I've learned how to do that. One of the things that I'm most proud of is we've actually codified that process. So if leaders go, I would like to learn how I can be more relationally intelligent and how I can then apply that into the way I lead every day. And of course, people pay for it usually in relation to their organizational performance. But then they go, oh, my relationships at home or my relationship with my family, all of it is the same. The more relationally intelligent you become, usually the higher the level of connection. And so therefore, for me, it's like, I think we're never going to go back to a world where it's just face-to-face. I always think that now is, for me, face-to-face is almost like a premium. And Zoom or whatever it might be is your bread and butter, your norm. And in a sense, you're now able to access resources from all over the world. But I always say to most virtual teams, I go, FaceTime without FaceTime doesn't usually work long term. So the rhythm on the whole, I would say, if you don't get FaceTime probably 3, minimum twice a year, it's really hard to sustain the relational intimacy and trust that's usually required at the highest level. So it's almost like when people are using remote working, you have to be very intentional at what you do with the time when you're all together. Because there's no point just saying, come into the office and we'll just work on our computers. You actually have to think about, if we're coming together, what's the most optimized way of using that time? Because ultimately the relational investment, the psychological safety, the trust, the alignment is part of that. So, some people, personalities that are different to yours, go, I love remote. I can sit in my bunker. Bronson, who runs all of our tech stuff, is a pioneer creative. He literally sits in a bunker controlling the world. We have to get him out occasionally, but he says, I can control the whole world from here. If I did that with you, it would be like, Steve, well, I don't know, matter how successful, but I don't feel alive. I actually need to be with people. I need some texture. I need some actual physical interaction, because that's what makes it real.
I mean, I think just going back to like the basics of introvert, extrovert,
Oh yeah,
is all about energy.
Yeah.
I'm your absolute stereotypical extrovert.
Yeah.
It's not about being loud, which I think a lot of people think extroverts are. It's about energy, and like I get my energy from people like you, from people in general, and I know that, and I think that's something which my partner said to me at the beginning of last year, and that's actually when I joined this startup community, Opus, where I just needed to be back around people, because I've been doing remote work for so long. I was actually doing before it was cool.
Yes.
So before COVID, before it was cool, I was doing remote work, and so I've been doing it for 2-3 years, and I just wasn't the same business mind that I thought I could be, because I just wasn't getting that energy. But somebody else will be completely different. Let's talk about leadership then. So a number of people first speak to the first-time founders. Doesn't matter any age, any discipline, but they all come from different places, different backgrounds, different upbringings, nurture, nature, etc. I have spoken to so many founders in the last year, and I love that I have been able to do that. One thing that comes up time and time again is that unknown factor of, are they a good leader? Can they be a good leader? But James, I'm technical. But James, I come from this background.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm a natural leader.
Yeah.
I was like captain of the football team when I was younger, or whatever that may look like. However, that's me.
Yeah.
Somebody else might be completely different. They might be the best engineer in the world, for example. They're not quite sure that they can be an impressive leader. Can they be an impressive leader?
Yes. I think the reality is that self-awareness is the first piece, because some people really love leading people. Other people would go like, if I have to, I will. Some people are actually better in the R&D space. So I think the key is to understand first, well, what are your superpowers? What's the type of leadership that you are able to be most comfortable in? And then actually to be able to learn how you can create team, or how you can lead in a way that actually allows you to play to your strengths. So, I still work with, I think I have 5 CEOs around the world that I still work with. Some of them I work with 9 years. Interestingly, 4 of them are introverts, and 3 of them are creative pioneers who have the least need for relational interaction with people. So in a sense, what I've been able to do is teach them not how to become someone they're not, but how they can actually create the environment and the strategies for each of the people they lead, and often their comm strategy and how people receive them. So I do believe, I do believe everybody has the capacity to lead it, but it's a skill, and you have to learn how to do it.
And for some, it's going to be harder
Yes.
to get there than others.
It depends whether you want it or not. Some personalities almost inherently believe they're congenitally born to lead, and their issue is usually humility and actually, how do I recognize I don't have all the best ideas? Others, it's like, well, am I good enough to do this? I remember doing it with a lady who was a CEO of a big power company in the US, and she was a nurturer like you. And I basically talked about imposter syndrome and why you actually need people to sponsor and champion you through it. And she's like, oh my goodness, she cried. And she said, I've been leading at the incredible levels for 30 years, and every day I wondered, will I be one day be found out? And I turned around to the room, because she brought a lot of her senior team with her. I said, how many people think Alice is an amazing leader? Every single person in the room put their hands up. Because she led the way she was made to lead. She didn't necessarily think she was a great leader. That's a much better thing to have, by the way, than think you're a great leader and realize you actually usually chaos and carnage behind you. Leadership is incredibly hard because you're changing all the time. So your nurture and choices are happening on a daily basis. But the people you're leading are also going through those things. Everyone's life is, somebody dies in the family, or, you go through, have a birth of a child, or if that's what I say to people is leaders don't need a bigger library because they haven't got the time to read lots of books anymore. They need a practical toolkit they can use. Then I would say these are just like tools, lenses, and mirrors. And, that's basically what we spent the last 12 years building. So I always say to people, you don't have to use them all. We use them in consulting, but there's probably a power 10 tools and self-awareness lens. Everybody can actually get really good at this if they want to. So, I think influence is another issue, James. So I often look at people when I meet them and go, what is the level of influence you have on those around you? And I think usually if you take it 1 to 10, there is an innate nature influence and the ability to grow it probably two more. So when you meet someone who doesn't really want to be the center of attention, hasn't ever led things, turning them into a charismatic entrepreneurial visionary founder is probably not going to happen. So I always say that basically self-awareness is the foundation, but the world will probably already tell you the level of influence you actually have by nature, and then you can grow it through a mixture of character, competence, credibility. So, but you often know there's intangibles of why certain people are able to grow things. But in the end, I would say that integrity is probably the most important value, because as a founder, you will be tempted to take shortcuts, and you will be tempted because economic realities are so challenging at times. But I always say to people, you can never trust an entrepreneur who hasn't failed at least once, is an American mantra, and I really believe it. But I also look at, have you maintained integrity even in the most extreme places of pressure which we get taken to? Because ultimately that's something that is way more valuable than whether this particular venture delivers your multi-million-pound exit. And that's, I think, that's why I love the new world and the new generation that's coming through, because I think my generation still inherently believed, take some of the political figures you see, if you're really good at what you do, it doesn't really matter what happens in your private life. And I inherently don't believe the generations coming through at the moment believe that. They actually go, no, if I'm going to learn from you, and if I'm going to give you, I'm going to work with you, whatever it is, I'd like to know that what you say you are is actually aligned with your reality. And I think that's another, I'm privileged to go on a number of these, I meet with, 20, we got the mountain with 20 young entrepreneurs. Do you know what's interesting is some of them are way more successful entrepreneurs financially than I am. But what they always want to know is, Steve, you seem to have maintained you're still married, your kids love you, you've got a great team, people trust you. That's probably more valuable than a bank balance. And I think that's the one where I often say to people is to go, we often in our scarcity think that if finance is the measure of success, I know a lot of people who've been hugely successful in finance, but actually when I look at their lives and their relationships and where they are, they look at me and go, Steve, you're more wealthy than I am. And I think that's one of those ones which I would say to founders, go, your character, your integrity, they're really hard to get back if you blow it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I know I'm speaking your language now, James.
100%. I think, wealth means different things to different people. For me and you, I think it's very similar. It's things like health, relationships, the love in your life. Financial wealth helps.
Oh, it does. Finance gives you choice.
It gives you choice. It gives you a bit of freedom. But I think as people, most people would choose the health and wealth of love and family. So 2 questions for you.
You say that. If your average founder may say it, do they really believe it?
And do they mean it? Yeah, it's an interesting one. But I think...
I hope they do.
Yeah, I hope they do as well. And I think, there is a lot to be said around how hard people work, how they take the potential shortcuts that, as you say, damages the integrity down the line. But let's talk about relationships then. You brought a lovely segue here, and I love this topic. So, co-founders.
Yes.
You're a co-founder. Jeremy's your
Yes.
co-founder. I've got a co-founder. I had a co-founder in my past business as well. So, despite someone who is very independent, I'm an only child.
Yeah.
Don't read too much into that.
I won't. Birth order is another piece of it. That's
but I do believe that I can do a lot myself.
Yeah.
Right. I do have that within me that I can take on the world. There is something intrinsic there. However, I always have believed in co-founders for balance, to share that responsibility, to share the wins and the losses. So back in 2012, you've now had a successful marriage at work for a cup, nearly a decade and a half. 65% is the stat. 65% of high potential startups fail because of co-founder relationships.
Yeah.
How do you run a successful business with a successful partnership at work? And I think what I'd like to do after that is lead on to your beautiful marriage, your beautiful family.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about a bit about that in a second. But let's start with the marriage at work.
Yes.
How do we make it work? How do we make it successful? What's important?
That's a great question. I always think that you have to have shared values on multiple things. So one of the big money. You have to actually sit down and do the difficult conversations at the beginning. I remember Jeremy saying, look, we're going to have a shared company credit cards. Here's the deal. You can invest, you can spend whatever of our money you want to, but you always have to have in mindset, which is, if Jeremy was here with me now while I put my credit card on the table, would I in any way be embarrassed? And if I am, then I'm going to probably ring up and apologize. It's only happened twice. I remember like where I got caught taking somebody out for dinner as a family, and they started becoming best friends with the sommelier and pairing wines, and I drew the line at the 250 pounds a shot Napoleonic brandy he was out. I go, I can't do this. So I literally had to ring it. So values around money. I think also a deep commitment to honesty and transparency with each other. And ultimately, you have to work at it. So I would say every relationship starts with "it's wonderful."
The honeymoon period.
There you go. Let's not go all the way to consummation, but the concept of actually going, it feels great, but then you suddenly find they're not perfect either. And the trouble is, you're not perfect either. So for us, we've always ended up being able to be each other's coach, to actually welcome the opportunity to grow. And, over the years, it's been way more Jeremy having to come to me and say, Steve, I've got something I need to talk to you about. And that ability to receive and constantly be willing to learn and grow, I think is really important. So we've had some rocky moments along the way, particularly as we live in different continents now. That, in the beginning, we all lived together and it was great. We had this big country estate like Downton Abbey, and we had two parts of the house. Each our families lived there for a year and a bit. So that was a really amazing place to begin. But I think we have a shared faith as well. And I think for us, the kind of arbiter of going, we have almost like a agreed standards that Jesus was better at this than we are. So for us, that was, I think, the most important piece. And our families were close. I love Kelly.
Because they come on the journey.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the reality is, if you're married to a founder, you're in anyway, whether you like it or not. One of the things I often teach founders is to be careful how much they poison the well at home by bringing all their, I need to talk about something, which is why co-founder is a good thing. But I think that for me is, you have to assume it's going to require the same amount of work that any relationship does. And you've got to create shared moments where you recommit. COVID was difficult for us. Imagine we didn't get to see each other face to face for 2.5 years.
It's like a relationship, right? Where you suddenly do long distance and you just go, gosh, like I'm used to just hashing this out over a walk around the house or over a coffee or whatever it may be, or tea for you.
Yeah. So radical honesty with each other. And in a sense also, the other thing I'd say is, you have to have somebody you co-found with who brings something that you believe is equal to what you bring. So if you're a lot of founders I meet wanting to co-found with someone who's really an operations person, I'm going, you can, and if you have the grace, you might make it work. But I promise you, 3 years from now, when you're winning all the business and somebody behind the scenes is playing a got an air traffic controller, are you gonna feel good about splitting the profits 50-50? I said, I promise you, you can pay somebody to be your ops director who is an absolute superstar. You don't have to give away equity, because ultimately, as an entrepreneur, the real skill is, can you both win work? For me,
So I think that's an interesting concept.
it might be wrong, but I'm just offering it as a.
No, I love it because it ruffles a few feathers, that, Steve. So I think I would say majority of founders that I speak to, one is the face or the salesperson, and one, let's say, does everything else.
Yeah.
The classic combination of it's a SaaS product, wherever you think SaaS is going as an industry now, which is very interesting. But that's a story for another day, or conversation for another day. But taking SaaS as a concept, you have a CTO and a CEO typically, or maybe stereotypically, where you might have 50-50 down the middle.
Don't have such an issue with that.
Okay.
Because if you think you can't have a SaaS product without actually having a CTO who's capable of building it. So the difference is, do both of you feel you've got a great deal? So I've always felt, working with Jeremy, he's brought skills and superpowers I just don't, I'm not as good at, and he knows the same way. And we're proud of each other's superpowers, and we actually champion them. It's not competitive. So in a SaaS model, you're right. The CTO might actually be the most important person in the organization. I guess I'm talking in terms of a service industry where, if you're selling consulting, whatever it might be, I still think you've got to be able to ask the question, 3 years from now, am I going to feel really good about sharing the profits? And do I really believe they're bringing equal value? So that's an honest question, because I say to people, if you're doing it just because you think you're going to be lonely, I promise you can find someone you can pay, or you can find some combination of finance and equity. But the key thing is, if you're going to share decision making and share ownership, you better be really careful that this is somebody you are really happy to be with, because I think that's the one thing which causes the most tension, when in a sense they feel, I'll go back to my past days, they're unequally yoked, i.e. one person is bringing a lot more value than the other. And I'm always going, hey, if you've got the grace for it, but go in eyes wide open, because it's not as complicated as undoing a marriage. If you get married, that's a legal contract which has life consequences. But getting into a business partnership, I think, is the second most covenantal commitment we make, and it's amazing. It's frustrating, but ultimately, personally, I prefer that model if I can find the right person.
Awesome. So let's talk about those decisions then. Two of the most important decisions you ever made: marriage at home and marriage at work. Yeah. So briefly, marriage at home. Yeah. You've got a successful marriage. You've got a successful family, I believe.
Interesting, definitely. Yeah, I would say so. I mean, so for example, my 21-year-old who's doing her finals right now at the Excel Arena actually phoned me to talk to me at 9 o'clock and say, "Hey, Dad, I'm here early. Can I talk to you about what's going on?" So I go okay, that's good. More, I would say, the woman I married at the age of 20, she was, and I was 22. We had absolutely no idea, James, who each other were. None of the self-awareness that I now bring. Helen was just very attractive, pretty. I enjoyed being with her. I didn't really think about any of the deep issues of what life would look like, because you're just naive and young and you just think everything's great, and that's what we do. So we've kind of grown up together. And I think, again, faith has been a really important piece of the puzzle, because I say to Helen, it's like for us, divorce wasn't really an option. We both come from very strong families, and it was part of our system. So when it got difficult, neither of us really ever believed, I think, oh, well, we're just going to call it a day. I mean, I was involved in a nightclub project while I was at the church, which was just awful. I mean, in terms of entrepreneurial failure, James, that was like, I managed to burn my way through a couple million of other people's money, and to such an extent that, we owed money to some very unpleasant people who threatened to shoot me, the children, and I was physically present, but emotionally, intellectually absent for at least 2 years at a very early stage with small children. Well, Helen was gracious enough to almost go, I'm in it. We've made this commitment to each other. I look at what happens now and go, I'm sure there were moments along the way where Helen would have gone, Steve doesn't get me. So, but I think the self-awareness, so 20 years ago, somebody paid me to go to Oxford and study these things, more as a gift to Helen, I think. And that created a self-awareness moment for me of just going, oh my goodness, Helen and I are complete opposites. Complete opposites in the way we view the world. How I was supposed to know that, I've no idea, James. But what it led to was just this ability to decide, I'd like to debate and fight over politics, economics, and global issues. For Helen, complete anomaly. Why would I ever want to do that? Or why would I want to fight with someone who carries a grenade launcher into debate when she's kind, compassionate, caring? So what you have to do is you have to find a way to be able to love generously the person that you are sharing life with. So I always say, if you want relationships to work well, 3 things you need to bear in mind. You need to learn how to love generously the way they most want to receive love. You have to learn how to speak life in the way that they most want to receive those words. And you have to begin with the end in mind. Because if you don't begin with the end in mind, where you actually want this to end, you will often get derailed in the storms and the challenges and all the things that will come with it. Because there is no perfect person, there is no perfect business partner, and life is incredibly complex. And I think it's more complex for people economically, socially, blah, 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 than it is today. So for me, I genuinely believe that kind of healthy marriages are the building blocks of the most stable societies historically over the last 1,000 years. But keeping one and actually raising children and being willing to have an extended family. So I always say to people, whenever you read mother or father in the Bible, they were never referring to the nuclear family. It was always the extended family that was both, in modern parlance, a blended family. So the household was made up of biological, the people who worked for you, the people who were related to them. It was a very, often quite an extended family model. And I always say that if you can lead those, entrepreneurs are usually some of the best at doing it because that's actually what we do in life. But the ability to create a way in which your wife believes that she's truly an equal, in my case, took a long time. Because why don't you want to change the world? Whereas now, I've learned to love Helen the way Helen most loves. So, and I'm incredibly proud of her and her superpowers. So as we talk, Helen is sitting on the bench in Uxbridge being a magistrate for the day. I can think of nothing worse. I would be far too opinionated, and it's completely voluntary, so you don't earn any money. But as a nurturer guardian, it's perfect for her. But I feel like that's an extension of what Helen and I are doing together. And I'm really proud of her. And I love the fact she'll come home and we'll sit around the table and she'll give us some examples of what she's had to, and we get a chance to decide what we would do, and usually we're wrong. But it's like, I'm really proud of her. I look at her commitment to our children, James. Everyone thinks our kids are amazing. We've got 3 girls, they are amazing. They ought to be. Helen has poured a lifetime of love on a consistent, metronomic, day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year basis. I am the ultimate maverick entrepreneur. I mean, I come in, swoop in, create huge inspiration. If they're ever struggling to, think what they do with their lives, or, like, I usually inspire them to do things. Helen then makes it happen. Why they all done grade 8 piano and ballet and all that? Well, because I inspired them to find something they were passionate about. Helen's the one who's made the metronomic drumbeat happen. So I think if you asked Helen today, do you believe Steve cherishes you for who you are? She would say yes. Would she have said that all the 32 years of our life? Nowhere near. So growth happens because self-awareness happens in you. And if I know how to love Helen the way she wants to be loved, it isn't the same as what I would want. So you can learn that stuff, is what I'd say. And then the selfishness. Pretty much every relationship I know, when it doesn't go well, it's usually because I'm being selfish, or I'm choosing to put my need above someone else. So I feel incredibly privileged because the woman I married turned out to be an absolute superstar. I had no guarantee that would happen at 22, James. I married for very, very obvious reasons at the time. But we've grown old together. And I think that ability to be relationally intelligent, to be committed to personal growth, probably applies as much in my business life, my personal life, my professional life. But love generously, speak life, and begin with the end in mind. So I'm 55 now. I'm now in the 15 years, primary years of influence as a leader. Historically, 55 to 70 are the most influential leaders of your life.
And look at most politicians, especially in the US. That's where they sit.
Well, yes, some of them are older than that.
And some are older than that, but yeah.
But you often think you can either retire and just head to the golf club and your second home and your holiday, or you realize that this is the moment where all the learning that you've had, you've got the space and the time to offer those things. So for me, that's the bit where I'm going, I would like the story. I often ask people, I love musicals. So Hamilton says, like, who lives, who dies, who tells your story? I would say to people is, when you are coming to the end of when you're at the end of your life, who's going to speak at your funeral? And what do you want them to say? And ultimately, if you can actually agree that, so I would go, what do I want Helen to say about me as a husband and a friend? What do I want my parents to say about me as a son? What do I want my kids to say? What do I want Jeremy? What about my business partners? What about the people who've met me? What do I want them to say? And as somebody who took, and still occasionally takes funerals, I've never, ever had a funeral address, James, where anyone talks about how much money they left.
No one cares.
Ever. And what they talk about is the person, the impact they had on their lives,
the generosity
stories,
of that person,
the memories they shared together. So I'm a great believer, and probably more so now than ever, of going, I'm trying to go in the key relationships of my life. Am I actually living with the end in mind?
The statistics show that with everything we've just talked about, that some CEOs are doing it wrong. Half of CEOs, over half, but it's about 60%, 61% of CEOs state that they're lonely.
Yes. Oh, all the time.
So, depending on how you measure loneliness, it's probably a mixture of personal and at work. And I suppose it also links in sort of co-founder land as well. How is that managed? How do you manage that if you are a CEO who maybe listened to this podcast today and you might be day 5, day 500 or day 5,000? How do you recognize that and then do something about it?
So I think naming it and realizing that as a founder CEO, the question is who is really on my team? So as Giant, one of the things we do most is usually walk with founder CEOs, because I go, how do you know? I mean, I've chatted with one last week who's going through a really interesting moment. Private equity bought it for a lot of money. He's still the CEO, blah, blah, blah. But they're now imposing a culture as money gets tight, which is not him. And the reality is you realize, who's really only on my team? So can I really talk to my team when I might have to fire some of them? Probably not. Can I really talk to the investors who all they want to hear is good news? And I'm not sure I feel totally safe right now. Can I talk to my wife? No, not really. Because she doesn't really understand the context. And who do I really get a space to talk honestly and openly about what I'm struggling with? So loneliness is almost endemic. And the more senior your leadership role as a founder, CEO, where the buck stops with you, ultimately, you have to do something about that, in my experience. Now at the beginning, you don't have lots of money. So one of the things you can do is ask somebody who's a bit older and wiser, go, hey, is there any chance you'd be willing to be kind of like a mentor sounding board for me? That for me is like, if I'm a young founder right now, I go, that there are so many people who are older, wiser, who've been around the mountain. Most of them are economically successful. They don't need you to pay them money. They'd be quite honoured, in fact. So have a look for who are the people who are further ahead than you, probably who are the people that character you trust, and go, hey, if I had coffee with you, or if you were my phone a friend, if I really got in trouble, would that be okay? I think that's build a little network of people who can be there for you. And most people love entrepreneurs, James, in my experience. They want them to do well. And if they're humble enough to ask, or cheeky enough to ask in some cases, But then you get to another level where you go, I need more than that. I need someone to actually work with me, the team, the organization. And that's really where, in a sense, what I guess our guys do is that. I mean, most CEOs, if you're interested, their title doesn't have a function. If you think you've got a chief finance officer, you've got a chief marketing officer, you've got a chief talent. The CEO, technically, their job is cultural and the empowerment of all. So, in a sense, the real skill is how do I create the environment where they get to be at their best, and who has Jedi skills, which actually helps me understand how do I, based on how I'm wired, actually create the environment inside the strategy of what we're actually trying to do. So that's the bit as well where I say to people it's really worth having a coach at some point, particularly somebody who is, for me, more than just the how you're feeling.
Yeah,
I want someone who's in the midst
100%.
of our team, who gets to know everybody and go, hey, a number of times people ring me up and go like, okay, I'm about to kill X, can you tell me what might be going on and can you help me? And I think that's the bit of going, I always say leadership is the intersection of people, capital, and strategy. So if you're the leader, or you call yourself a leader, and you're not actually making decisions about those things, you're probably not. And most of the advisors that you can actually help you with things, you can only be a master in one. I say you can major in one and minor in a second. But don't believe anyone who says they're an expert in people, capital, and strategy. So if you're going to have if you're a young entrepreneur founder and you're kind of getting off the ground and you haven't got lots of money, try and find someone get 3 people who be a standing board, who's great on people, who's great on strategy, who's great on capital. You'll find they overlap, but then you don't get to be the best in the world at all 3 at the same time.
Find their areas. Yeah, I honestly believe, I say this time and time again, one of the biggest hacks in early day startups is not one of these, although there are many great ones, AI tools or AI whatever that you find online, or this, that, or the other guide that's going to change your life. Majority or not, it's from people. And I am a huge believer in advisory boards, getting good mentors. I had them in my past business. They not only generated hundreds of thousands of pounds of revenue for me through connections they put me in front of, they also guided me through. I ended up outgrowing them. So they were agency owners. I was running an agency. They had gone from X to Y, and I eventually had gotten to Y and wanted to go from Y to Z. And I had to have a conversation with them and said, hey, look, thank you so much. You've been remunerated because you had that sort of deal in place. You don't have to do that. As you say, I think if somebody came to me as someone 10 years my junior who would be more than sort of fit to be entering founderland entrepreneurial journeys, and they said, hey, James, I would love just to pick your brain here and there and just be a WhatsApp away, I'd be like, yeah, of course. Like, here's my WhatsApp, but I don't need anything from it. But I think I'm in the midst of trying to grow my own business. If there's someone who is twice my age, or even, a decade or 2 on, they're probably at a position in their life where they're looking to give back, and they have got a lot of value from the entrepreneurial community, and they will be more than willing to put their time and energy into you. Yeah. So
I joke and say that kind of the reason why I now go and speak on things is because they have actually codified my brain. So in a sense, the AI and the apps and you can ask it anything and it knows you, and it will give you answers that are actually better than mine at times. So combination, I'm with you. I don't believe tech replaces touch.
Yeah.
But I also go, the very best tech is getting unbelievably good right now. And I was saying to you, I'm looking at the stuff that's, we're already there in terms of app and AI. It's like they call it Yoda. That's what it's far too complicated for me. But fundamentally, you can ask it anything, and it has basically been trained on everything I've ever taught.
Yeah.
And it is like, you can ask it, hey, I ask it now, like, hey, present idea for Helen. It knows her, it knows me, and it goes, what about this? And I go, be more specific. We're in Gerald's Cross. It will actually recommend. So you can become more relationally intelligent actually by being coached almost, in a way that you can't afford, which says you have you and your team on it. It will literally, you can ask it, go, hey, I'm about to meet James. How could I help this one-to-one go well? Give me 3 things.
Steve, you're running into dangerous territory here. I think there's going to be a number of spouses out there who are going to be not interested in so much of what we've said today.
It's only a problem if you tell them what you've done.
They're going to go straight to the end cause and go, Steve, I want to know what I'm going to get my spouse a present for.
There you go.
I wanted to ask you a last question today. So, luck and talent.
Yes.
2 very important parts of any person's founder journey. We haven't touched upon luck massively today, but you are talented in so many different ways as the pioneer personality that you are. In your opinion, what do you think is more important to a founder, luck or talent?
Well, talent, I would say, if I had to choose, because fundamentally, if you haven't got talent, luck will only get you so far. So I think that luck, when people boil it down, is not, oh, business wasn't going well, so I bought a lottery card. That would be luck. Most luck is the fact that you continue to actually invest in the relationships and you refuse to give up. So in my sense, when people describe, oh, I was so lucky, it isn't lucky. It's actually they'd invested, or they'd had the courage to ask somebody for help, or they'd found somebody who was being disproportionately kind. So therefore, for me, again, I always go back to how did Jesus do it, and that's Jesus when he sent the disciples out 2 by 2, and then sent me 2, said, go into the place and look for the person of peace. I've actually prepared somebody for you. They will invite you into their home. They'll be kind to you. They will be disproportionately generous. They keep inviting you to places. Go and stay with them, and they'll introduce you to all their friends. So if you were to go, what's been the secret of our luck? Sometimes the person of peace in our world is like so keen it's ridiculous. Why are you trying to be so kind? We haven't got anything to give you. But they didn't look like the people who were going to buy a big contract. What we learned was over the years, if we do that and we just trust that process, they often end up introducing us to someone we can never have seen. So it's a bit like, depending on where you are. So for me, relationship building helps you be more lucky, because if you're somebody that people like and you're for other people, we often say freely give, give first. If you can, be a person of generosity. Somebody may, when you're struggling yourself, you always think, well, I can't give anything at the moment. Okay. No, generosity begets generosity. But also, I say to entrepreneurs, you don't need the whole world to buy your product. You'd be overwhelmed. But I promise you, there are people in your world, in your relational ecosystem, who really, really are being disproportionately kind. Go and serve them. Give them the best you have. Give it away if you need to. And trust and go, like, if I do a great job for you, would you help me meet whatever it might be? So I think luck is a rather... I think it's a cop out. Like when Bill Gates says, "I was lucky. I was at a school where they had one of the mainframe computers." Well, opportunity is one thing, but you still actually have to usually do the work and the talent. And for me, it's like, if I say to entrepreneurs, the one thing I want you to be is somebody that people want to be with. Be for others. Be generous. Because ultimately, in the end, your relational ecosystem is the thing that's going to define the success of your business. Far more than, ironically, how brilliant your product is. You have to have a great product, and it has to have product market fit, and you have to hone and refine your message, like I talked to you earlier. But do you know, the people who succeed most, in my experience, are the people that people want to help. And a lot of your clients know in the beginning you're getting started, and they know that you're probably not the best in the world. It probably means you're just going to give them a lot more time in the beginning. But actually they go, no, you're honest, you're real. I think you'll grow with us. I'll work with you. So that's where I think that relational trust and influence are more valuable, that make you lucky. As it said, one of the cricketers said, I think it was one of the golfers said, the more I practice, the luckier I get.
Yeah, absolutely. Be generous. Steve, where can people find you if they're looking to connect with you after the show?
The easiest one is personal email, so steve@5voices.com, LinkedIn, but steve@5voices.com will get you straight to my inbox. So that one's not out there that often, but if people have heard this and they're interested and they want to talk more, I have a passion for this stuff, and actually have built an awful lot of resources now that mean you can't afford to have me in your life all the time, But the reality is there are a lot of resources now, which means you can be more relationally intelligent, and that's probably why I
Awesome.
love being able to share that with people.
Awesome. And you're Steve Cockram on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Steve Cockram.
Steve, you have been my everyday founder. Thank you so much.
Thank you, James.